Welcome to the WineDown, an afternoon podcast where two techie blokes sit down over a bowl of wine and chat about what's happening in the world of tech. Enjoy while Scott and Nick open up about their week in technology.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the WineDown. I'm Nick and this is
Scott.
and that is
Matt.
hello Matt, hello Scott. How are you both?
Very good, thank you, Nick.
Yes, thank you, Nick.
And now, where are we? What are we drinking?
We are in the Greenwood Hotel, and we have a lovely red today, the Howard Park Cab Sav, Margaret River Cab Sav.
Very nice.
Beautiful drop.
Let's try it.
Yes. I mean, I got to admit, this is probably a good thing. It's a nice drop because we're on to the second bottle. Although,
And where are we? Talking about the Greenwood. Where is it? Yeah, what
yes,
are we doing?
North Sydney, in the generally fairly close to our office, so that's quite good. But the good thing, I guess, is Matt's with us today, and then Matt's up from Adelaide.
Yes. Travelled all the way up from Adelaide to join you boys on the wonderful WineDown. Thanks for inviting me.
That's all right. Matt works with us as a developer, and one of the, I think, most depressing things I find with Matt is that he lives 9 minutes from McLaren Vale.
Yeah, it's a hard life, Scott, I tell you. You've got to be very controlled.
Yeah, this work from home thing, I tell you what, sometimes I wonder where you're working from. Anyway. Oh well.
Good old virtual background. So what are we talking about today?
So look, we've been doing a lot of working clients around how do we make their businesses more productive. Mm-hmm. And one of the common things we see is the clients starting down some sort of a project to say we're trying to improve the business or make some part of the business increase the efficiency or do something, and they've acquired some software or they've acquired a SaaS platform and they said, oh look, I can just go click, click, click and I'll make all this happen and it'll solve all my problems.
Yep, well there's lots of that. And also you get organisations who think, well, software, how hard can it be? I'll build software that'll let everybody use my unique intellectual property in a software platform. We see some of those too.
That's right. You know, as in, many years ago, I worked out how to put 3 or 4 lines of code into something and spit out some answers. I'm sure I can write this myself and do that. And I tell you what, it's scary today when you see some of this.
Yeah, there's a bit of a difference between building a few lines of code and actually building a commercial software product, right?
That's right. I mean, there's a big gap between expectations.
Yep.
And also, it's today. Look, IT is complex. It really is these days.
It is. So we used to say when I worked at Microsoft that the first copy of any operating system, that first gold CD-ROM, cost about $1 billion.
That's right.
The next one cost 38 cents.
That's right. It's all the R&D cost and the development cost.
So it's expensive to build software, but when you do, the returns can be amazing.
That's right. Just put you on the spot here. You once told me the average cost of a line of code, or the 1,000 lines of code, or
So a line of code is estimated at the moment to be fully tested and implemented in production about $80.
$80.
$80. That's
Wow.
what most governments work off when they're specifying a project.
So hang on. So if I went and wrote a little line of code that produced Hello World, you'd give me $80.
It has to be useful. It can't just be something that says
Oh,
Hello
okay.
World.
Well, hello, Nick.
That's useful. So yes, but I wouldn't give you $80 for it because I also have the skills to write "Hello Nick," and I can do mine in italics. So
I will say that today is very special
yep.
because I just saw one of our subscribers walking by.
Well, we actually had a subscriber come up to us and say, "I'm one of your subscribers." I went, "That's amazing. There's two of them."
You're the one. That's right. Oh no, it's good.
Just to add to that, guys, I'm a software engineer and it's really good to have well-documented code, which means comments in your code, so it's a little bit more expensive there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So hang on. So my one line that says "Hello World," if I put 9 lines of comments below that,
It's still one line.
oh really?
Still one executable line.
Okay. I'm just sort of try,
Yeah.
Oh well.
And then remember, you've got to run it on something, and you've got to support it, and you've got to do
yes,
logging.
I know.
And all the other things you've got to do. It's not just as simple as that. But the metric's about $80 a line of code.
Okay. Well, let's see what we can do with that then. So look, we're when we had a look at this, we're working on how many clients we've seen who are trying to really make all this happen, all this magic happen themselves, and they eventually, 99% of what we see tends to be they get stuck at a certain point or really frustrated, and it ends up that they're not really helping their businesses. They just spend a lot of time and effort trying to be something that they're not.
I think people think when you go and buy a piece of software, you think it's a thing that's complete. Certainly you hope it is because you're buying it. But what you know, and Matt can probably talk to this well, software development is a journey, not a destination. Right? You start on a process to create something that you aspire to be somewhere, but you're never actually going to quite reach it. So you have to go through iteration after iteration. That's why we do software versions. Right? And software doesn't live in isolation. It sits on top of an operating system that talks to networks and talks to other systems. All of that's constantly changing. And so your software has to continually update. So you need to, if you're going to get into this and build software, you have to understand that you will never stop paying to build software.
It's a continual process.
And if you do stop, your customers will drop off and off and off until you're getting no revenue anymore.
Or your platform starts to age and become technical debt.
Yeah. Now that's my experience in like software, in building software in startups and that sort of space. I know, Matt, you've worked in the commercial environment. Well, is it the same thing there?
Oh, totally, Nick. Yeah, software is definitely a journey, and as business requirements change, or as your business grows, the software needs to grow with it. So if you start with well-architected software from the beginning, then that aids in that process. But definitely it's always a moving feast, and it requires TLC to keep it in shape like everything else.
Yeah, so the worst management comment in the world is, when will it be finished?
Are we there yet?
Yeah, no. It doesn't mean you can't commercialize it. Doesn't mean you can't make money out of it. Doesn't mean it's not useful. Yeah. But it means that continues.
What we are seeing, though, is there are some platforms becoming available that do make it easier to develop solutions.
Yes.
You don't need to know all the programming languages anymore. You don't need to have an IT degree or anything like that. Some of these solutions are sort of like building business processes, drag and drop, and getting a bit of detail in there. But you still need to really know what you're doing.
I think that's, well, it seems, we call that low code, by the way. And while that seems new to a lot of people, it's actually followed a trend. If you look at how software development started, effectively we would boot a PDP-11 by flicking switches and putting bits into memory and loading them and then doing the next bit. And then we moved on to something called assembly language, which was really simple. I can still remember LDDIR, which is a Z80 opcode for load, decrement, repeat. Just proving some of my age there. And then we moved into higher level languages like BASIC, Pascal, Fortran, and COBOL, and they were still quite difficult to write. And then we start moving into what they called the 4GLs, the fourth generation languages. And now we're into, most languages we write now don't compile directly to the processor. They sit on top of a layer, which provides all sorts of functions that you don't have to write. So we don't write sort routines anymore. There's lots of things we don't write anymore. You used to have to.
These are problems that have been well solved, so why try to reinvent the wheel every time?
Exactly. And so low code is just the next iteration of that, where you're not typing things into a text editor anymore. You're dragging and dropping blocks, and you're now really close to solving the business problem rather than really close to the hardware and the compute capability.
Okay. So it is easier for business owners or business analysts, for example, to go and create some processes or some systems online. Yet I would also say that unless you're really doing that properly, as in that is your role, that's what you're studying for, you're trained, you know the software well, you're probably not going to get the result that ideally you'd like.
Well, if you take the ideal of, I want to automate my people out of the loop and get the computer to do everything, you have to start, and Matt described this really beautifully earlier today, you've got to understand your business process. And most people don't. They think they do, but to the level you need to detail it, we've just been working with a customer recently who, to be honest with you, Scott, really understood their business process, but nowhere near the detail we needed to automate it.
Yeah, look, I was speaking to another client this morning, and they described something to me, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you know what, that would be very easy to automate. And we actually talked about this. I said, everything you've done there in your spreadsheets and your calculations and your numbers, we could automate that very easily. However, I don't know if automating it would actually help the business, because it's the fact that you're actually in this spreadsheet every day, looking at these numbers, putting them in, updating them, and really focusing on what they are. That's where the value in the business is, because now you're on top of your numbers and you know whether you've got to do something more or change the way things are happening or something like that.
Yeah, and there are things that can be automated. You know, I was at an accounting conference, And this guy's up on stage and saying, the biggest thing ever to happen to the accounting industry is 2 monitors. You know why? So they can copy data from one system to another. Last time I looked, computers are okay at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that kind of automation, that kind of stupid busy work we all do for some of our day, we need to find ways to automate that, and there's systems that will help us do that.
This is the paradigm shift part. This is the Uber versus the better taxi.
Yep.
The little changes are, yes, we can improve the taxi, but Uber comes along in this paradigm shift and says, I'm going to completely change the way the industry works. And that's the thing that really gives us the gain.
Yeah, but and with respect, for every Uber, there's 700,000 failed startups who thought they could revolutionize their industry. Writing a software business, writing software is one thing. That's hard enough. But then implementing it, marketing it, getting it in people's hands, making it scale, making it do what people need, getting rid of the bugs, all of those things make it really lucky if you get it right.
Especially these days where an average programmer coming out of university can write some code in their garage, publish a little iOS app, and all of a sudden find that it's got 1 million subscribers.
I was going to say, it's lucky now you can actually write code in the house. You don't need to be in the garage to write code now. It's quite fascinating.
You can actually stay in the warm. I don't know. In some respects, staying in the garage in the cold was a good driver to do well, so you could move into the house. But
Yes.
I don't know.
Cool. So, we've talked about that. We've talked about low code, but fundamentally, I see businesses all the time who've gone and, with no experience in software development, written software. I haven't seen that end well many times. A few I have, but not many.
They tend to get to a point where if it does work well, and yes, it can run the business, but then either the person that did it is tied to that business and that bit of software, because if they go, even on leave, no one knows how to change it or fix it or do whatever if anything happens to it. Alternatively, if you want to take that and make that software do something else, you're really limited to that person's concept of what programming is.
Oh, well, let me give you a cracking example. I used to work for a major bank somewhere in the world, and they handled a whole bunch of mortgages. And in that jurisdiction, when the bank had a mortgage, they kept the deeds for your house. And they kept it in a physical blue envelope, and all the envelopes were identical. And on the front of the envelope was a barcode. And they had 1.3 million of these packets, and they get it out to do some transaction and put it back in the vault, and it will get tracked using barcode scanners and this single Windows NT4 server called I won't tell you what it's called because then everyone knows what I'm talking about. And one day it went down, and I was there doing support, and I said, well, who was the guy who wrote the software? And they go, well, really sorry, he's not with us. I said, well, he might have left, but has anybody got a phone number? He went, no, he's really not with us. And so the guy who'd written it had passed away.
Oh no.
And nobody had any idea how this SQL 4.5 database talking to a Visual Basic middleware layer actually worked. And one of the execs went, oh, it's fine, we can do it all manually. We did the calculations. It would have taken them 11 years, working 7 hours a day across their entire team to identify all of the packets.
Yeah. We saw this with some very old software attached to some very old machinery a while ago as well. The software one day just decided to stop working. And it was literally from the late 90s.
GW Basic.
Yes. And it'd load up.
I think Bill Gates actually wrote that.
He may very well have, actually. The software would load up. It would start to look like it was going to do something, and all of a sudden it would just exit.
So that we've seen that in our little places. Matt, you've worked in places where software's mission critical, right? Where if it goes wrong, people don't survive. Do you see that happening there too?
Yeah, definitely. I remember a few years ago going to a banking conference, and one bank in particular stressed that they had to have 5 backup sites because if the system was down for more than a day, they lose their business. So,
yeah.
But that's on the grand scale. But often, from the small scale to in between, you still need the backup ability. You still need a team to maintain the software, to share the information across programmers. Very, very important.
Hey, that's an interesting point. We haven't talked about that a lot, but I will. Everybody has this concept in their head, at least in business, of the IT guy or the developer. from my experience, you can't build software with a single person.
No, it's definitely a team to build software. Good software requires a team. So everything from project management to business analysts, subject matter experts, testers, trainers. So yeah, definitely requires a team to get it right.
Yeah, and also one developer can't test their own code because it's like testing your own email. You can't spot your own spelling mistakes.
That's right, Nick. It's generally not a good idea, and you usually have a team dedicated to testing.
Yep.
But also, developers can write unit tests for their own software, but you can't beat that human element of a test team.
Yep.
Going over the software with a fine tooth comb before it gets to the users.
Yep. No, for sure.
So let's look at that a step further. Let's say I decide to develop some software or develop a platform. Do I go and just hire a team of people in-house to do this? Is that what you've seen?
Yeah, that's a good point. It really comes with a lot of consideration as to building bespoke systems. You really need to look around and make a judgment about whether there's something already around that does that. These days, software as a service is very popular. It makes a lot of sense because other people are doing the hard work when it comes to testing and releasing new versions of the software, and that can often be a lot cheaper for your business to engage software as a service rather than building your own.
I'd also say managing a software dev team. If you're a company that builds widgets, suddenly managing a software development team is a totally different experience to the staff that go and build widgets. And I've seen lots of failures where like an accounting firm has built a software development team. For a start, nobody wants to work there because software devs want to do leading edge stuff. Secondly, they don't want to hang around there because it's accounting, not anything else. It's difficult, right?
I've generally found developers to be a very unique group of people compared to your average people in a business. And they need to be managed differently. They've got different metrics. They've got different ways of doing things.
Maybe the developers are right and everyone else is wrong.
Oh, it could very well be the case.
Yes, it's a very long-term commitment, building your own software. And I've seen systems where they've engaged developers or a team to build the software, and then the team's moved on and the business has been left with the software, and generally it just stagnates, nothing happens to it.
They don't know what to do with it, right?
Yeah, meanwhile the operating systems and versions of software that it's built on change and progress, and often these systems just stay there, and after a while they become unmaintainable. Yeah. So that's why it's very, very important to always keep your software moving along with a team.
And I think that's worthwhile understanding, right? The underlying platform we write on, and this would be the same if you wrote on top of Java or you wrote on top of something else. We wrote on top of .NET. That does a major version upgrade every year in November, right? And so if your software doesn't keep up to date with that, its maximum longevity for support is 3 years.
Well, to be fair though, I don't know we've found a lot of bugs in the underlying platform.
There are security vulnerabilities because
That's
it's complicated.
Okay. That is fair. That is fair indeed.
Yeah, and you've got to keep up to date with those. So we run, across our code, we run this thing called Dependabot, and Dependabot tells us whenever any component we rely on needs upgrading. Now, I tell you, Dependabot is firing 30 or 40 things a week at us.
And this is the thing these days, that it's not so much that, hey, I found a bug in the operating system or something like that and stopping my code running. It's a security flaw has been identified. Am I exposed?
Yeah.
And if I don't patch it, what's wrong?
Or Microsoft are expiring TLS 1.1 and we've all got to move to TLS 1.2, and that means suddenly your code won't talk to anything because you haven't upgraded it. Or they changed how disk access works, and you've got these things change.
Yeah. And there was a quite significant bug that was identified in one of the platforms that you build software on. I won't mention what it was, but very, very significant, and it opened the door for hacks and attacks from the internet, and it was very, very significant, and a lot of companies really had to do a lot of work to patch that up, and again, that would have been a lot more difficult if you had a system where the software wasn't being maintained, because you got to get a team to get across your software to do that upgrade, and then to retest, etc.
And I think the other thing to think about is a lot of people don't realise size. They think, oh, if my software gets successful, I'll make lots of money. Well, if I look at organisations who built software that's successful, I'll take a New Zealand example, Xero. Well, they're spending $250 million a year on software development, right? So you look at the costs, you need to match that with revenue and make that work. So, and they have to keep up with everything the rest of us have to keep up with. So it's important to think about. And that's not saying don't do it. There's scenarios where this can really work. But for most Australian organisations, unless you're a software company, it makes sense to go to a third party who knows how to do this, who's working on lots of projects, who can bring that big, broad knowledge into your domain, I think, and make it work. Kind of like the team I run.
Yeah, but
sorry, did I pop that in? Sorry.
Very self-serving, I think. Yes, well done, Nick. No, but I think it is true though. That's unless you're either choosing to be in the software business, in which case certainly go build your team, but be in the software business, then you're probably not going to achieve the result that you need or that you want.
Yep.
And it's more cost effective, and you might get a much better result going external.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and often one model that's very effective is, as a business you engage software as a service, but you do have your own in-house developers to do high-level programming or build extra systems on top of that.
Yep.
And there might be different reporting requirements or different workflow requirements. So you use the software as a service as the base software, and then use your guys for actually doing really important things for your particular business.
The other thing I think about if you're going into this is it's not just building the software. Once the software's in market, who's your customer going to call?
Exactly.
Because your dev teams aren't going to want to support it because that's not what dev teams do.
That's
so
right.
Where's the help desk? Where's the support infrastructure? Where's that stuff? And I think that you need to think about that as well.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yep. Especially if you've got a large product with a huge customer base. Developers can get very overwhelmed very quickly without that backup, without that help desk.
Cool. Scott, you don't have a mic, so no one can hear you.
There we go. That's great.
Awesome. I think that wraps it up. That was an interesting conversation. Thank you, Matt.
It was.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming all
Thank
the way
you.
from Adelaide to still wind down with us. We appreciate it.
Yes. Go back to your bottles of wine and you're working from home, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, always very good. And you guys will have to come to South Australia for a wind down
We'll
sometime.
come and
We're there. Okay.
So next week, the wind down will be from South Australia in the wineries. So,
The week after. And the week after. Yes.
so anyway, look, thank you so much for watching or listening. If you do like what you hear, make sure you give us a like, make sure you subscribe. And if you want to discuss a topic, leave a comment. But from me, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.